It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. From Fantadrax TV, this is Good Morning Tatooine!
Good morning, Tatooine indeed. We're back once again with your weekly recap of everything Star Wars and Lucasfilm. I'm your host, Brian Cameron. With me, my co-host, Mr. Paul Naylor. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Brian. Hopefully people can hear me. We're having some technical issues here. Can you hear me, Brian?
Very faintly, Paul, but we'll soldier on.
If nothing else, this will become the Penn and Teller edition of
Yeah.
Good Morning Tatooine.
Should we crack on? Let's see what's coming up on the show tonight.
Let's have a look.
Up first, we're looking at the future for the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run at Disney Parks, as some future plans are revealed, including The Mandalorian.
And Rick McCallum has been talking Star Wars Underworld. What it could have been. I mean, that's something that I think you and I have both pondered on over the years, so that'll be interesting.
Yep. Could a night of the Old Republic series be heading to Disney Plus?
Please, that would be great. Mara Jade, Emperor's Hand limited edition Legacy Lightsaber is coming to Disney stores and parks.
In Jabba's court, we'll be asking the question about with Jon Favreau's rumoured future work on the Oswald the Lucky Rabbit show, whether that means the end of The Mandalorian.
Who knows? Who knows? And Andor, Star Wars Story Season 2, new poster and crew details. Fantastic stuff.
And we'll also be getting a little special look that was uploaded to Disney Plus for Andor, the second season as well, a little bit behind the scenes.
And Toy Fair New York 2025, Star Wars Hasbro Retro Collection has been on display. Our thoughts?
And last but not least, in the show, we'll be doing a recap and review of Andor Season 1. We're up to episodes 7 and 8. And that is a pretty jam-packed show, Paul.
Yes, if a bit mute.
Yeah. You're coming in a little bit louder now, so hopefully everyone at home is able to hear. Mr. Newbold saying it's coming loud and clear, so hopefully the people at home can hear if I can barely hear you.
Fingers crossed. Well, that doesn't matter.
Yeah. Hello to Jonathan as well in the chat. Let us know, everybody, your thoughts on the news as we discuss them. And we'll include as many comments as we can. I always like to hear what everyone thinks. It's the best way to get the pulse and what the fandom is thinking, is to get everybody's thoughts and views. Let's crack on with the first story, Paul, because there's a lot to get through tonight. And first up, we had a panel with Jon Favreau to do with Disney Parks. And he announced some updates to the Smuggler's Run that's going to coincide with the release of the Mandalorian and Grogu movie in May the 22nd, 2026, which seems a long way away, but it's just over a year. And they're going to be integrating the movie storyline into the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. With, I guess, what they're describing as kind of side missions almost. It's not going to retell what's happening in the movie, but little things happening off camera that'll connect to what you see in the film.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be themed so that it coincides with it, but that'll be an interesting way of sort of mishmashing and crossing over different sort of, well, not time periods, but to bring the ride up to relevance for the upcoming projects. So anything that does that, for me, that's great, because there'll be people that have done Smuggler's Run so many times that fresh content will be great. There'll be others that would love to go and have a go on it for the first time, but it's certainly something that I've been doing in the past. Yeah.
We've seen updates to Star Tours over the years, so I guess this is the rest of the rides experience in that. I guess there's not much you can do with the Rise of the Resistance ride and changing and updating that unless it's a complete overhaul, but Smuggler's Run has possibilities, I guess.
Do you think that's the image that they've shared there? Do you think that alludes to the fact that they will be going to Bespin and Cloud City?
I think it suggested not to worry too much about the release images necessarily, but quite possibly. I just hope I
Would be
get a better
great to
team
see
of people, because when I went on Smuggler's Run, bunch of useless kids. Come on.
them. Well, when I went on there and I was in charge of getting the coaxium, we got 2 lots of coaxium. So, all good.
I wasn't so lucky. Anyway, moving on to the next story. Rick McCallum has been interviewed, and he discussed the Star Wars live-action TV series that was supposed to hit screens in 2009. And this is a promotion arc piece up there that Mark shared on the site again from 2006. I think it was from a toy fair. And they promoted the 30th anniversary in The Force Unleashed in 2007, Clone Wars animation in 2008, and to follow that, the live-action TV series in 2009, which was to be called Star Wars Underworld. They've got a lot of amazing talent to work on the designs and the scripts, and ended up with 60 scripts that sit on a shelf somewhere at Lucasfilm. Rick McCallum described it in the past week as dark, sexy, and violent, and wonderful, complicated, and challenging to make. We're talking it would cost somewhere in the region of 40 million an episode, so very expensive to make. It would have blown up the whole Star Wars universe, according to Rick McCallum, and Disney definitely would never have offered to buy Star Wars from George after it. I don't know if that's a good comment or not. And Rick McCallum described it as being one of the great disappointments of his life, not being able to make it.
I mean, what I've seen of it over the years and what I've read about it, I think we've probably had hints of it given to us in different shows. I think we've seen bits of it perhaps in The Mandalorian, bits of it in even the Obi-Wan Kenobi series where they were on that planet where they saw the clone trooper with the beard with his helmet asking for money. I think we've scratched the surface of it, but it sounds to me like it would have been absolutely amazing.
And there's nothing stopping Disney picking up those 60 scripts and making them.
Exactly. I mean, that's that's a big part of the job done.
Would you like some
Why
dark,
not?
sexy, and violent Star Wars?
Of course I would. Yeah. What would you imagine it to be like from those comments, Brian? Are you thinking that it would have been sort of, yeah, 1313,
Well,
yeah.
we're going to speak about Andor later, but like Andor went to a brothel, effectively. His sister being an escort, apparently, at said brothel. So it's not like Star Wars hasn't gone a little bit dark, sexy. He killed people in cold blood in that same episode, so it's gone violent.
Yeah.
So it hasn't. It's not that it hasn't gone there in certain degrees. I don't know what dark, sexy, and violent is. Is that just like Jabba's palace?
I think probably something more akin to the first Blade Runner, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's kind of where my mindset is. It's a little bit more. I think George probably better than anyone realized, and he probably experienced this with the prequels, that the age group of the Star Wars fans had moved, and so he was moving his proposed TV show to accommodate that. And that's probably something Disney haven't done as much, where Disney have kind of, I don't know if I want to use the word neglected, but I will. They've kind of neglected the fans that have been there from the start in favor of trying to get new fans, in my mindset. And I think in a lot of the ways that when they've spoken out, they've spoken about finding a new audience. They lost their existing audience en route. And that's been their biggest mistake. And there's hardcore fans like that that have stuck around. and soldiered through, and we find elements that we like and become frustrated by other things.
Yeah, I think that's a fair sort of summing up. I think it's the same not only with Star Wars but with many different TV, film franchises, across the board, where we've tried to bring in diversification. It has impacted perhaps on the way that certain fans would have thought things were going to go. So, it's been very female-led, a lot of the Star Wars content over the last few years. We've had Rey, we've had Jin, even in video games, the key character in what's that
Outlaws.
one called? Star Wars. Yeah, you've got a female lead character. So instead of leveling up, what they've done is they've gone the other way. So instead of trying to bring things so that it's for everybody, they've pushed certain people away from it. That's just my view, but I think that there's room in the galaxy for stuff that is certificate U, certificate PG.
Yeah, I think, especially when you've got something, I can understand the movies going a certain tact.
Yeah.
Sticking to the sort of PG-13 kind of flavour that kind of historically has been. But the TV shows, you've got room to go for a young audience, and you've got room to go for an older audience, and you've got room for somewhere in the middle. And they've all got an audience there, I think. I don't think you can necessarily do Star Wars for everybody anymore.
No. The more you try to do it for everybody, you do it for nobody.
That's kind of where I'm at. Mark's suggesting Dark and Sexy could have worked 18 years ago. Today, not so much. And that's the problem, I think.
Yeah.
And that's the mindset. I'm not necessarily sure that's the reality, because everyone will talk about you need to do X, you need to do Y, you need to incorporate this and include this group, blah, blah, blah. And then the projects fail to find an audience. So you're doing X, Y, and Z to try and include all these different people and reach out to all these different people. And then that people aren't actually interested because they're not tuning in. Exactly. And then you lose existing audience on the way. So why not make Star Wars for the Star Wars audience instead of chasing something new that you don't have, and somewhere along the way you'll pick up an audience? Because it's like anything in a school playground. If X group of influential kids are buzzing about something, all the rest of kids will watch it. So you don't actually have to hit everybody to become popular.
I mean, at the end of the day, Star Wars exists in a different galaxy, so it could have a completely different set of rules in terms of the way that people lead their lives. So just let Star Wars be Star Wars, and let the people that want to gravitate towards it.
And I do think Dark and Sexy can still work, because look at Game of Thrones. It's a very dark, violent, sexualized program. It's HBO. It's kind of part of their stick, and there's a lot of HBO programs go that way.
Yeah, I'm sure it's got fans from all sorts of different walks of life as well. It's very sort of patronizing to try and do something with any genre, and because you think that that's the narrative. Just let the thing be its own thing and let the people come to it.
And I don't think, since the acquisition of Fox, I don't think Disney can present Disney Plus as being a family-friendly platform, and it's all cookie cutter, lots of sugar, happy, jolly, hating the music as you walk into Disneyland because it's so upbeat and irritating. I hate it. Right, it's not that original Disney flavour to anything anymore. Disney's a little bit of everything. Since they acquired Fox, there's a lot of content in Disney Plus isn't family friendly. In the UK, we get Pam and Tommy, for example. That's like, I'm not being funny, but like, I'm sure there's not anybody under the age of 18 appropriate watching that. They had Rivals, which was a UK based program with David Tennant. It's not family friendly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that give people a Star Wars that they can grow into.
yeah, and I think so. And I think that's where Disney have missed the beat, and they've tried to go back and make content for 7, 8, 9, 10 year olds, not appreciating that the fan base is either from the 1970s, 80s, or from the late 1990s, 2000s. So whatever way you
Yeah,
look at it, you're in your 20s or you're in your 40s and over.
yeah,
When Disney bought the franchise, as much goodwill as you want, there wasn't anyone under the age of 13 massive fans of Star Wars, or at least not in significant numbers,
yeah.
unless you're getting introduced to it by your parents. And so when you're getting introduced something by your parents, it's still the parents you've got to target because they're the one pushing it on the kid. But there you go. So yeah, I'm disappointed we didn't get Star Wars Underworld. I would love to have seen
Very,
what George had in mind. It would have been different.
yeah,
And I was a
totally
big
agree.
fan of Rick McCallum. He
Yeah,
gets a lot of stick, but I liked him a lot. And I met him at the first celebration in London. And he was just walking about the show floor, and like nobody was recognising him. And I stood and talked with him for about 20, 25 minutes. And
brilliant.
just a fascinating guy, incredibly passionate about everything that they did. And, at that time, I think it would have, I can't forget when the first London was, but they were probably thinking about this live action series at the moment. I think Indiana Jones was in their mind as well at that time.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, a shame. Anyway, talking
Massive,
about
massive.
talking about content that could reinvigorate a less than happy fan base, let's say. Knights of the Old Republic, a classic video game now, it has to be called. Hugely popular. There we go, fact checking, Mr. Newbold, July 2007. So right there, right at that very time. That's a good memory I've got. And Knights of the Old Republic, incredibly hugely popular game, and it had its own sequel as well. People still enamored by the characters from that all these years later. It really caught their imagination at the time. And Daniel Rickman has made the claim that they're developing an Old Republic based TV series. I've encountered his rumours before, and he's one of these people that throw darts at the dartboard and occasionally he hits. I think it's a no-brainer that they're developing something in the Knights of the Old Republic era, because why would they not? They know it's hugely popular. Whether it ends up getting made is a whole different thing. I think any single fan that can come up with an idea or an era as to where they could go with the Star Wars story, it's been discussed and it's in development, as they say, doesn't mean it's going to get made. So I don't add anything. I don't think this rumour has any value until they announce something.
It would be fantastic if they did go down that route. Like you say, it's been rumored on a number of occasions from different sources, and it is a little bit like throwing a dart at a board and knowing that you'll hit the right digit at some point. Were you a fan of Knights of the Old Republic?
I didn't like it that much as a video game. I thought aesthetically
No?
it was pleasing. Wasn't a huge fan of the actual game, to be honest.
Yeah,
The
I thought it was
cutaway
pretty
scenes were
good.
better than the actual game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's definitely something that they could make either a film or a series out of quite easily. And
It's just
again,
a
this
fresh
goes
start
back.
again, and you can do it
Yeah,
wrong like they did the Acolyte, or you can do it right like they've done Andor. You can pick a
yeah,
point in space and time, not have any original characters in it, and
yeah,
just hit it right. And Knights of the Old Republic is an era where you can start afresh and bring some new concepts in as to how things
yeah.
work.
I mean, if the Acolyte had been a huge success, if it had really hit home, and then there would have been stuff from that that would have blended into the later day Star Wars. There would have been things where people would have picked up a lightsaber from that era or whatever. But because it is so distanced from the rest of Star Wars, the fact that Acolyte didn't land as well as people hoped it was going to, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the narrative that we know. And it'll be the same with the Knights of the Old Republic. But I've got a feeling that if anything was ever made for that, that it would be a success because it has already got a decent fan base.
Yeah. The big problem is that fan base still there? Because my kind of feeling is that like a huge part of the Star Wars fan base has kind of disappeared, and I don't think you're going to get them back. So how much do you lean into people of our age group, Paul, now?
Yeah, I would think that whilst, I mean, have they disappeared? I think what they've probably done is they are keeping an eye on what comes out. They're not going to commit to things like the Acolyte, for example. But if something came along that they felt they could engage with, they'll be all over it. I think once it's Star Wars is a very difficult thing to give up. If it's in your veins, it's in your veins. So I think people will just keep an eye out for something that they feel that is Star Warsy, for want of a better phrase.
Yeah.
And we'll reconnect.
Yeah. Talking about people, places, and characters that could bring back. Next story, Mara Jade. Mara Jade, one of the actually most popular characters from the Legends era of Star Wars publications and books and comics. She was, of course, eventually Luke's wife.
Yeah.
Started being introduced as the Emperor's Hand in the Thrawn trilogy from Timothy Zahn, and kind of evolved from there and became somewhat good and somewhat grey, and announced through comicbook.com, limited edition Legacy Lightsaber, including the hilt, as well as the Emperor's Hand issue #1 comic book. And this infuriates me because I'm a comic book collector and I stopped. And I was a completist. And because they've released this lightsaber and it has the Emperor's Hand issue 1, and that's from the Dark Horse era, so you're going back to the 1990s, early 2000s, I have to go and buy this lightsaber in order to get the comic, in order to remain complete. So I had to order this, and it wasn't available in the UK, so I've had to order it to a US address, and I'll have to pay customs charges, and Disney, I hate you so much.
And is it just a hilt, or will you get a blade that attaches to it?
You can buy the blades separately. They gladfully inform you.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, was she sort of like a pinky purpley blade?
I can't remember what her colour of her blade was. That's terrible. I should know.
I've got a feeling it was a pinky purple, if somebody can confirm that.
Mark Newbold will correct us in a moment. Just going back to the Knights of the Old Republic there, just a comment there from Jonathan. He's never played the games. We'd like to see it in live action. Agree with Paul. If Acolyte was successful, it might have happened, as it's similar sort of material. I kind of think that's agreed. I think the fact that Acolyte kind of failed maybe makes them a little bit hesitant. Purple, it was.
Hey. Yeah.
And if I buy the lightsaber, that'll be my third lightsaber hilt that I will own. And all three have bought purely in order to get the comic book that came with them. So that's $1,000 worth of an investment there to get 3 comic books. Isn't that pathetic?
Well, that's commitment.
Yeah. And this is what's wrong with us as fans, that we criticise them for doing this, but we'll still buy it. And thus it justifies it to them sitting around the boardroom. Doc Andor, I hate you. That's all I'm saying. I'm going to have to blame him.
It's a good stance.
His den of antiquities should be a den of den of something else.
A den of profanities.
Yeah, irritating, but there we go. It looks nice, to be honest, and it comes in a nice little presentation box as well, which will sit on the shelf gathering dust.
It's an investment. There you go.
Do you think? Do you think anything that we're buying is an investment? Because
Surely.
The viewing numbers are going down, Paul. But does this signal to you Mara Jade's got a future? Could she appear somewhere?
I would like to think so. Yeah, and whether they would use the character in the same way as they did in Legends, I don't know. I'd like
Mark's
to
just
think
saying
that
there, I'm just going to interrupt you to say, blame poor Doc. Poor Doc? Have you seen the prices he charges? Can't call him poor. But yeah.
I would like to think that Mara Jade will turn up. Whether they go down the Legends route, whether we see her as Luke's wife,
could
that
they
would be
introduce
great.
her in the Mandalorian era and then kill her off before they kill off Luke? And the Force Awakens, basically, they killed off Luke.
Yeah, well, we know what happened to Luke. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, there is a possibility that she could turn up there. Yeah, it might explain why he's become so sort of other than the problems that he had with Kylo Ren. That might have been another issue. So yeah, yeah. What do you think? Would you like to see her?
I can see her coming back, reimagined, not connected to Luke. But I can see her coming back in the Rey era.
Yeah.
And I say that because she could still remain having been the Emperor's hand. And you've got Rey, who is the Emperor's granddaughter.
Yeah.
Makes for an interesting dynamic if you want to have two females, good, bad, grey. What one goes bad? Does the Emperor's hand the evil one, or is the granddaughter? I quite like to see Rey go evil.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we got a hint of what she would be like if she was evil, didn't we? We had that sort of cryptic scene.
Mara Jade indeed was the most popular character of the 90s after Vader and Fett.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, has a feature if they use her rightly. And if they want to take my concept, I am available to write the Rey movie. I'm willing to be the 7th or 8th person to have a shot of it. I've no experience writing film scripts, but you've obviously got enough versions sitting there from various world-renowned writers. I reckon I could just jump on top and just steal the format and hammer it out.
It'll write itself. It'll write itself, Bri. All you need is a script editor. Mr. Newbold, he'll be all over that. No problem.
What we're saying, Rey versus Mara Jade. That would be a trilogy.
Yes.
There we go. On that point, we should probably head to Jabba's court, Paul, because we've got a big debate to have, because it's not like we don't have a big debate on every news item, but there is a topic this week for discussion. So let's head to Jabba's court. We haven't had a Jabba's court for a couple of weeks, but we're back. We have. Not since we had the episode where we talked about suing Disney, I think. We haven't been kept off air, we promise. But no, we just didn't have any major topics for discussion and far too much other things. We did have major topics for discussion, to be fair. We could have talked about Kathleen Kennedy and her presidency and all sorts of things, but we didn't. But we are this week going to talk about Lucky from the Marvel films making Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. And does that affect the future of The Mandalorian? Because obviously we've got the movie coming up. It's in the can. The story's written. The story's filmed. No word on a season 4 of The Mandalorian. There's been a few cast have spoken out that would love to come back, but they haven't heard anything. But generally, they don't find out quite late in the process anyway. So that's not necessarily a telltale sign. But we have this story that came out this week that Jon Favreau is working on Oswald the Lucky Rabbit TV series for Disney+. Now, those not keeping track, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit is now free to be used by any company that they wish, so they can make one of these. Generally, it's a horror film using a Disney character or Winnie the Pooh or whatever it is. Oswald's now, or the very early Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, is now free to use because his copyright has expired. some of the little bit later Oswald the Lucky Rabbit trademarks still in place. So part of me thinks this is a move by Disney to create something new with the character in order to extend and retain the license. Because if they do something new with the character, they can apply for new trademarks. That would be the let's sue Lucasfilm mindset of me if I was being Lucasfilm Disney rather, are just global business intent on doing globally businessy things. Paul, do we care that he's making Oswald the Lucky Rabbit TV series? I don't. Who cares? But does it affect what he's doing on for Lucasfilm?
I'm pretty convinced that the Mandalorian era, we're getting close to the end of that now anyway. So we've got the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, and then I think I'm right in saying that there's then another that brings together all elements of the Mandoverse as a film in its own right. So I don't think we'll get a Mando season 3. I think we'll get the setup for that Mandoverse film in the Mandalorian and Grogu film. So I suppose it means that Mr. Favreau will be quite busy crossing over from one to the other for the short term, but then he can concentrate on Oswald thereafter. I don't think Jon Favreau's done his Star Wars.
No, I think he's just a Disney guy, and he's going to dip in and do Lucasfilm projects. He's going to do Marvel projects. He's going to do his own stuff. He's just well connected in the Disney sphere now.
And I think that he's almost a double act, isn't he? With our dear friend with the hat that did the Clone Wars. So I think that the two of them together, they will work on a number of Star Wars projects. So once the Mandalorian lineage is all done and dealt with, they'll move on to something else. I personally think that to be able to give Jon Favreau a little bit of breathing space to focus on these, Mr. Filoni will be looking at more animated content. He'll be going back to his roots, and I still my money is on Star Wars set in the original trilogy era as a Pixar-y type of cartoon style. That will be probably the best received Star Wars stuff that we've had since Disney took over. I genuinely think that's what will happen.
Really good question here from Death Star CISO on YouTube. He thought he heard this week that Jon Favreau had mentioned a already written season 4 of The Mandalorian. We did publish that this week, but it was actually a very old interview. It was quotes from a very old interview that predated the making of the film. So I don't know if season 4 has morphed into the film, or the fact that they're now doing a film means that what he'd written for season 4 not so relevant and not necessarily still on the table.
Yeah, I'd also read that, but I interpreted it similar to what you said there. I think they've taken, they've sort of gone through it. They've picked out the bits that they want to put it into that film, and there's probably elements of it that will appear in the Mandoverse film that will tie everything up. So yeah,
I kind of agree with what you've said as well in terms of, if we go back to when Disney were doing Disney Plus days and they were announcing all sorts of projects, and they announced about 12 projects for Lucasfilm, of which maybe 3 have been made. They announced at that time that they were going to be linking all the Mandoverse shows together and having one big payoff in a movie. I don't think The Mandalorian is that. I think The Mandalorian is effectively what season 4 was going to be, and Dave Filoni's follow-up film will be what culminates the Mandoverse, and I think that's where it will necessarily end. And as you said, Jon Favreau will be involved in that, I'm sure, at the very least as a producer, and I'm sure he's had big input into contents of the script as well.
Definitely. I just hope that the Mando and Grogu film is good in its own right. because otherwise it jeopardizes that tying up of all the loose ends with the Mandoverse. But yeah, Mark's right. We're moving beyond it, and then we can start looking at these other films that are slated, and hopefully they will go into production.
I think the problem the Mandoverse has faced is that the spin-offs haven't necessarily worked, perhaps as intended. Rangers of the New Republic obviously had off the field issues. Not going to happen. Boba Fett was pretty much derided by Boba Fett fans. Ahsoka, I thought was okay. I wasn't a big Ahsoka fan. I don't follow the animated stuff, so a lot of it went over my head a little bit, I think, and really didn't interest or excite me. It's got a second season. Probably wouldn't have got a second season if Dave Filoni wasn't in charge of creative, I would think would be fair based on ratings. But it's not going to get more than a second season. So yeah, definitely the Mandoverse looks like it's coming to the end of an era, and it hasn't necessarily spun off in all the different directions that they maybe wanted to continue it in different ways. Not to say that a successful couple of movies wouldn't allow them to dip back in and do some more, but I don't expect to see Din Djarin himself appear beyond the Dave Filoni movie.
No, I think they're starting to realize that to make the big bucks, you've got to make films. That's where Star Wars belongs, is on the big screen anyway. So they've kind of gone at it from the wrong angle. They've created characters through TV that are now going to make it onto the big screen.
Yeah.
Future projects ought to be big screen first, and then once you get something that is powerful and people get behind, then you can do a relatively low budget TV series. I know we're still talking millions, but you can continue that story because you've already planted the seed with the film. And I think that's the way they're going to go back to it, because at the moment, streaming platforms are struggling with revenue. So they need that big shift to the big screen, make that initial wad of money from that they can then invest in the shows to continue stories or whatever, and keep that cycle of TV to film to TV to film, keep that running so that you're making a more profitable business. Just makes sense.
Yeah. Mark mentioned the Skeleton Crew there as well, which I completely forgot as being Mandoverse centric, really show. Just, yeah. Chris David making a comment, Sabine was really whiny and annoying, to be honest. I don't really know the original Sabine character. I thought she looked good on screen.
You're from another era, Brian. You're from another era.
You can see Din Djarin in Smuggler's Run, though. I've seen him walking about in Batuu, which is supposed to be sequel trilogy era, which they kind of abandoned because they've kind of realised that, oh yeah, that's not what people want. People want to see Luke, Han, Leia, and we're going to get to see them. They've announced Luke. People just want a Star Wars land. We don't want a set in a particular continuity and timeline, I don't think. We just want to enjoy Star Wars, don't we? And we all like different bits of it. Just give us a Star Wars land. I don't know. Are we going to get more Skeleton Crew? They haven't really announced it. I would have expected an announcement before now. And I agree completely with you on the streaming issue. And I predicted it way back at the start, and I've said it repeatedly and been shouted down by many people over it. The TV companies tried to make streaming a thing and say that people no longer wanted to watch linear content, and they destroyed their own linear platforms in order to make streaming platforms. And basically what people want is to pay less for content, and the streaming services was great. I can cancel my $60 a month linear TV package and I'll pay for a $9 a month streaming package. And then the companies all realized, oh, but we need that $40. And, and I don't understand how every single Hollywood company have made the same mistake, but they all made the same mistake. You know, you took less revenue and you knew you were taking less revenue, and then you spent stupid amounts of money to make the TV programs, which meant you then had to cancel them all. And then people were saying, yeah, but such and such looked great. It looked great because they were throwing money at it that they shouldn't have, because they had no chance of making that money back. And what you're seeing now is all these streaming companies are leaning towards reality TV shows, game show type things, and all that cheap kind of content. That's what you're going to see over the next 2 to 3 years, because that's what they're all making now. But if you look at what young people are watching, so you're looking at the 15 to 25 demographic, none of them are watching the kind of content that in the UK you get on the BBC and ITV, which is game shows and antique shows and all that kind of garbage, because it's cheap to make. That's what the streaming companies are all leaning towards, and they're going to lose the young audience. And you're already starting to see that in terms of not necessarily subscriber numbers have dropped yet, but viewing hours have dropped by 20%. And eventually that has an impact, because when your view numbers start going down, your ad revenue goes down. And all these streamers are now leaning heavily into ad revenue. And they've got a big problem.
Yeah. I think the other issue as well is, I mean, I go way back. So I mean, I was 6 or 7 when Star Wars came out. And the model back then was you get a film every 3 years. So there was plenty of time to market it correctly in terms of the merchandise. So you'd get plenty of Star Wars figures from each of the 3 original films. In fact, the Return of the Jedi line was huge in terms of figures and play sets and vehicles. You don't get that now. Because you'll get a season of something, and then straight after that you'll get something else come up. Well, certainly that's been the case. So you will get a handful of figures at best from one series, and then the way that they look at it is, well, you know, we're going to make all these different things: playing cards, paper plates, whatever, and we're selling those. But so, you know, we're getting plenty of money off the license, but you're not giving the fans what they actually want. You're not giving them the collectibles that they want. So you'll lose a lot of people that way anyway. But also that property, each sort of series, Mandalorian, Ahsoka, whatever, almost becomes disposable. Unlike the original films that we were enjoying when we were younger, these things become just like something on a treadmill. Right, what's next? And it's treated like that in merchandising as well, which is a shame, because there's so many characters that they could have made as action figures that have never materialized. They would have been fantastic.
People are just not as invested anymore because there's too much too soon. Mark makes a very good comment about linear content and physical sales will make a huge comeback because people want to own what they buy. I agree. Case in point, picked up them in the last week, which is Ahsoka and Obi-Wan on don't even know what they're on Blu-ray. Not sure I've got a Blu-ray player. Put it in the PlayStation, it'll work. And in fact, I'm going to put it in my Blu-ray CD writer there and probably put it onto my computer. Which would buy the physical content in order to own it, because the streaming services take away. Case in point, Willow. Mr. Newbold also making a great point here, and there's way more chance for a James Bond quiz show than a James Bond film or TV show in the next 3 years. I agree. The only thing that Amazon have done since they bought MGM with relation to James Bond was like a game show kind of thing, which nobody watched and nobody really became aware of. They haven't done anything else with a lot of the MGM licenses, Stargate particularly a passion point of mine. They're not very good at developing things, Amazon, from the IPs that they do own. A lot of people don't like the Lord of the Rings content they've made. I do. I kind of like it. I kind of enjoyed it, but it's been hugely unpopular with existing Lord of the Rings fans. And second series certainly didn't get the numbers that the first did, and it's been $1 billion investment from Amazon to make that show.
Has that been cancelled?
It's getting a third series, but they took months and months before they decided to push the button on it.
Right.
Jonathan making the comment he thinks Bond's going to go down the TV show line. Feels inevitable. Yeah. I'm a James Bond fan, not to the point that some people are, but I'm hugely passionate about it's Ian Fleming's James Bond.
Yeah.
And so James Bond has to be the character that Ian Fleming wrote. I've already seen comments along the lines of, as long as he's someone from the Commonwealth, which to me means he's not going to be British. We're going to have him from Canada, Australia, or somewhere else. And I think the three names I saw were a Canadian, an Australian, and an Indian actor, all proposed for the role. It's not Ian Fleming's James Bond. I'm sorry, but it's just not.
I really do think that they get things so many wrong in the guise of diversity. What they should do with things like Doctor Who, James Bond, Star Wars, anything like that, is create another character in that same sort of.
Spin off with a fantastic new character. And
we can have a strong female agent. She doesn't have to be Jane Bond. We can have just all sorts of things that are just so wrongly handled.
The most positive thing happening for Lucasfilm and Star Wars content at the moment is HBO's Harry Potter. Because for the next 10 years, it's going to get all the hate. I'm just throwing it out there now. It's going to be absolutely torn apart. And Star Wars, if it's clever, can just slinkly get back its core values and make great Star Wars content and do some really creative stuff like they've done with Andor. And I'm very pleased to see very many of the Disney and Lucasfilm top heads coming out in support of Amazon in support of Andor. And I hope they realise when they make significant investment and they get the right talent behind a project, they can make something special that is both critically and commercially very successful. And Andor's series audience grew episode per episode, which no other Star Wars series has done on TV. So I'm very confident a second season of Andor will do very well. We may never see Tony Gilroy back doing Star Wars because he's given 10 years to Star Wars now. I'm sure he wants to go and do other things. But the right creative people involved in a project, and it shows you what you can do. Jonathan mentioned as well, Amazon are talking about doing a Miss Moneypenny series set in the 50s and 60s. Yeah, okay, I think that could work. It doesn't excite me, really. It's a little bit like Agent Carter spin-off TV series that Marvel did. It's fine, but it's not Captain America. Mr. Newball's agreeing on Bond as well. No need to change anything. Spin off new characters, but Bond has to be the centre of the universe. Everything happens around him. And to me, if you're going to buy a franchise like Bond because you've bought MGM in order to get it, you buy it because you love that character as he is. And that should tell you everything as to what you should make that character going forward. And you can do fantastic creative things with him. Like when they basically rebooted it for the last James Bond and ran how many films was it? 5 films? And it was a whole arc. You can do that again with another actor and have him a very different personality, but still resemble the Ian Fleming James Bond.
I mean, they effectively killed James Bond off, didn't they? So a spin-off series would be perhaps 00, and you've got 001, 002, whatever. You could do that. Another thing that could happen, similar as for what's happened to Harry Potter, is that the Bond films get remade as TV series so that they can explore the original Ian Fleming novels in a longer format.
That's very possible, and I wouldn't necessarily mind that. Mark making a comment, Tony Gilroy in a post Return of the Jedi Mon Mothma series. I actually saw a comment, and I think it's going to be part of Making Tracks this coming week, because you were asking for comments, Mr. Newbold, to do with fewer questions in order for you when you were recording the show earlier today. And I saw a comment from Rebecca Benjamin and from Tarkin's Top Shelf podcast. Great podcast. Check it out. And she made a very interesting question and point, which I think is going to be on Making Tracks this coming week, about how Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, and Saw Gerrera are kind of this generation's big three in terms of Luke, Han, and Leia. And you'd really have that potential to go forward with Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, and Saw Gerrera as lead characters in a series, which could be very interesting, I think.
The only thing is, of course, Saw Gerrera does get killed off in Rogue One on the lead up to A New Hope.
Yes, but we haven't necessarily explored a great deal of Saw Gerrera's story.
So we're talking pre A New Hope then.
I still think so, yeah.
Yeah. I saw Rebecca's suggestion. It's a good one. Whether I would categorize those three characters as Han, Luke, and Leia, I don't think they're in the same league, but they are strong characters.
Yeah. Mark confirming they are going to answer that question on Making Tracks this week. I'll just throw that up here. You can find Making Tracks on Phantom Tracks Radio. There we go. And that, Paul, rather, brings us to the end of this week's Jabba's Court, which was an interesting debate. I don't think we really got an answer to it. But
we touched on it at the beginning.
But we covered all grounds there. I think Jon Favreau is going to be around. I think he's just a busy man. If he was to develop a project, I would like him to go back to his character from Friends, Pete Beckett, the Ultimate Fighter champion. Because think about it, when that came out, Ultimate Fighter champion was really just starting to build an audience. Think where it is now globally. And it would be great.
I think he'll just go on a nice hiatus while he's doing Oswald stuff. Give Mr. Filoni the opportunity to do some real good Star Wars animation based around maybe post Return of the Jedi era, or even set between Star Wars and Empire, or Empire and Jedi. And why not have it as something that jumps around all over the place, just gives us some great Star Wars content that we can say, yeah, I really love that. Oh, I'm not keen on that. I really love that. Let's let them get more creative with stuff.
And we may well find out next month at Celebration, because there is a Mandalorian and Grogu panel where I'm sure they will talk about the character and its future. And if they're going to make big announcements on animation, I can see it happening there as well.
Let's hope.
And on that point, we'll call it an end to this week's Jabba's Court, which is obviously part of Good Morning Tatooine, which we live stream every Sunday, 9 p.m. in the UK, 4 p.m. in New York, and release as its own video every Wednesday at 7 p.m. And back to the main show, back to Good Morning Tatooine, just seamlessly transitioning there. And we've mentioned Andor, and Andor is the next content we've got to discuss, Paul. So this week as well, last week we saw the trailer. This week we've got a new poster, some details of the crew. Lovely new poster there, which very reminiscent of Rogue One, and it continues the theme of destroying farmers' land, which I've been harping on about now for 3 weeks. Shocking. Look at that. Just burning in the field. Terrible. We also got the news that it's going to unfold over 12 episodes, broken down into 4 chapters of 3 episodes, which will release 3 episodes at a time. So it's going to be released over a 4-week period. I hate that. I hate that so much, Paul. I go to work.
I know that disappoints you. I know.
I can delay it and go to work for 9 p.m. on certain days instead of 8 o'clock starts. So I normally do that when there's Star Wars content out, and the content drops 8 o'clock, so I can watch a 45-minute episode before I have to leave to go to work. Can't watch 3 episodes in 45 minutes, people. On a very personal note, I don't understand this one, but why is Lucasfilm doing this to me? They're targeting me specifically.
Well, you've been very outspoken about them, Brian, so it's about time they got their revenge.
Oh, I know. This is another reason to sue Lucasfilm. We're going to have to make another episode.
Yeah, I mean, I work for myself, so I'll be able to just sit there and just watch the episodes. I'll phone you up. I'll tell you what they're all about.
Terrible. Obviously, we know Tony Gilroy's the showrunner, executive producer, along with Kathleen Kennedy. Diego Luna, also an executive producer this time around, and Tony Gilroy's brother, Jon Gilroy, who presumably is contributing a lot and not just getting free cash. See, that's the kind of comments that get us sued. Tony Gilroy wrote the first 3 episodes. Bill Willimon writing episodes 4 or 6. I believe he wrote the Narcana 5 episodes last time around. Dan Gilroy is keeping it in the family, penning episode 79. I don't even know if he's unrelated. And Tom Bissell putting pen to paper for episodes 10 to 12. Directors of the series, Ariel Kleiman for episodes 1 to 6. Janice Metz for episode 79. And Alonso Aruzpalakiokis. I don't know how to pronounce that. I do apologise to Mr. Alonso. Doing episodes 10 to 12. And as Mark says, we're going to be rushing at these episodes just so we can review them. No chance to watch them before work. And spoilers are going to be everywhere. There's also, this 3 episodes a week also creates a problem. When can you discuss it with your friends? Because by let's say 10 o'clock on release day, like most Star Wars fans have watched it. Not going to have necessarily going to be the same when it's 3 episodes.
Have we been told, or has there been any hints as to how long each episode's likely to be?
Well, I'm hoping that each episode's 15 minutes.
I knew you were going to say that.
But I think it's wishful thinking. It's going to be much and such round about the 40-minute mark, I think. It's kind of... They were fairly consistent first series.
So you've just basically got a film a week, haven't you?
Yeah. Basically. Gonna have to watch it on fast forward, skip through all the boring parts, which we don't know what the boring parts are going to be. It's complicated list. Like, it just can't believe they've done this to us. What were they thinking?
Well, I hope they didn't release it at like 2 in the morning, like they did do with Skeleton Crew.
It's going to be 8 o'clock in the UK, which means it's going to be out the night before, or what's that, midnight in America, I guess.
Yeah.
So we're going to be spoiled to heck by the time we get home from work by social media, scumbags on social media. Terrible. Do we want to have a look at the special look? Because obviously that came out this past week as well. But first, I need to pick up on a few points. Comments made by Mon Mothma in the special look. I blame the Emperor himself for ordering the brutal attacks on the people of Gorman. Their peaceful world is one of countless systems helpless under his oppressive rule. It's not oppressive, democratically elected. This massacre is proof that our self-appointed Emperor is more than a lying executioner, again, voted in for by people like Mon Mothma, imposing his tyranny under the pretense of security, again, using legislation voted in for by Mon Mothma, and we cannot allow this evil to stand. I believe we're going to find out that it was not the Empire that caused the massacre of Gorman, but it was in fact Cassian Andor. And basically Mon Mothma is responsible for the murder of the people of Gorman. And but the interesting thing, the fact we're going to see the massacre of Gorman during the Imperial rule where they tried to restore order, that's what they were trying to do. Peace, to restore peace to the planet. Poor Governor Tarkin accidentally landed his Star Destroyer on top of some people.
It happens.
Happens. You know, we've all done that. We've all hit a bollard when we've been reversing. So will Tarkin be in Andor season 2? Because he was a big part of restoring peace and justice to Gorman.
If you can't get out of the way of a Star Destroyer that's landing, then you're no better than the bloke out of Wayne's World that can't get out of the way of a steamroller. You know, I mean, you've got plenty of time. So.
Totally, Mr. Newbold here. Imagine for orchestrated distinction to light the fuse. 100% what's going to have happened. Dirty Cassian Andor. And basically, Mon Mothma here with her comments calling the Emperor self-appointed. She's J.D. Vancing. That's all she's doing. Just throwing out absolute garbage comments and hoping it sticks. And so basically, you've got a rebellion based on lies. Lies and slaughter of innocent people. And these poor stormtroopers blamed for it when all they were doing was trying to calm a situation created by Cassian Andor and Luthen Rail and Mon Mothma. Disgusting.
And all I can see right now is you in your Krennic cape.
Yeah. I'm going to enjoy season 2 of Andor because the lies in it are going to be something spectacular every week. Anyway, let's check out the special.
Emergency broadcast, if you can hear me!
We are not who we were when we started.
Imperial ships are already landing.
We need to speak out. We need to stand up.
Is there no one who can help us?
We need a pilot. A soldier.
Everything I did for the rebellion.
Revolutionary movements are spontaneously happening all over the galaxy. How those come together is the stuff of our story.
If season 1 laid the track, then season 2 is the juggernaut.
The Empire cannot win.
Well, they haven't won yet.
We're building a real army.
The rebellion's everywhere now.
Galaxy of opportunities.
The insurgents have weapons at this point.
We're counting on it.
These 12 episodes are going to take us over the next 4 years into Rogue One. The complexity of the show, the possibilities of the show. It has to be all in.
Nobody's allowed in here.
You're thinking like a thief.
I'm thinking like a soldier.
Think like a leader.
The size and scale of this production is unparalleled. The sets and the costumes are breathtaking.
Everyone does the homework. Everyone takes the time, and you can tell.
Proceed.
This is it. This is what you live for.
It's human. It's incredibly truthful. And it just happens to be in a galaxy far, far away.
It's the urgency of the situation. Not palpable.
Lock it down!
If we do not stand together, we will be crushed.
This is the end. Have no expectations.
Looks good.
It really looks good, yeah.
And it was Mr. Jabba. She's J.D. Vance, and that's our fancy t-shirt for the summer. I think that's maybe what we should call the show. Mon Mothma's J.D. Vance. It's going to be interesting because I think it's going to be very grey in the way that it presents things, and it's not going to present the rebellion as being pure and good. We're going to see some dirty tactics, I think.
I think you're right. I think going back to like when Rogue One first came out, the opening scenes where you see Cassian kill somebody who he's probably known for a very long time because he feared that they were going to blab because they couldn't climb out with their broken arm. Straight away, you were being told that the rebels aren't all good. Everything is down to opinion. If you're an Imperial follower, such as yourself, Brian, then
a follower of democracy.
Follower of democracy. There you go. It's all down to a point of view, as Obi-Wan Kenobi would say.
Well, you've got to remember that the Star Wars story happened a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. You're only seeing one telling of the story from one point of view. It is the Journal of the Whills. That's where I get my username from. One version of history is never the whole story. Very much in the same way that some people will present Churchill as a hero and some will present him as the villain. You know, it's every story has layers, and you start peeling away the layers of the onion. And I think the most interesting comment from that piece was Cassian Andor's insistence that everything he did for the rebellion, which is basically, I did a lot of bad things.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to this. I think the sad thing about this is I think it's going to be so good that it's going to be a shame that really that there can't be anything else because it just leads into Rogue One.
And it's going to be over in a month.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on because the news is running late. New York Toy Fair has been happening this past week, and the Hasbro Retro Collection was on display. I actually going to run just a little bit of the clip from Pixel Dan. I don't want to show it all, but go and check out his whole video. We'll show a little bit. He's got a whole video up from New York Toy Fair, and fantastic content as always. And you get to see
so this is like you just said, stuff Kenner never did before, right? New retros.
Really cool.
You are something of a figure collector. Big fan of what they're doing in the retro collection at the moment.
Yeah, I'm a fan of what they're trying to achieve, but I would say that there are certain producers that have come up with better versions of some of the figures that are in that pack. We've long waited for a Han Solo in Stormtrooper disguise. I would say that the Stan Solo version is far superior to the version that you get in that box there. Same with the Rebel Fleet Trooper. The Stan Solo version is way better. Even the Pro Custom version of the Fleet Trooper is far better. Pro Customs have also done the Luke in Yavin gear, and that to me looks way better than what we've got in there. It's the right thing to do, but not necessarily brilliantly executed. But yeah, I mean, it's sold out all over the place. The pre-order for this thing, it's just sold out everywhere.
Yeah.
I haven't personally ordered it, but I do like it. I like the fact that they've put Walrus Man, Ponda Barber, in there, and given him finally his sidekick, Dr. Evazan. Yeah, it's a nice effort, but not necessarily quite hit the nail on the head.
Yep. Check out the show notes. You'll see the link to our article, which has Pixel Dan's video embedded in it. Go check out his channel. Check out the video. Only want to show you a little clip there because we don't want to steal his content. And so go check that out, and you'll see a real deep dive. He does a little interview as well, which gets some interesting answers to some questions about these figures as well. So well worth checking out if you're a big collector. And that covers this week's news, Paul. But we've got time still to whiz through 2 episodes of Andor very quickly. So let's head to the Death Star Cometh.
Still proud of that one.
And this week on the Death Star Cometh, we're covering episodes 7 and 8, which is the beginning of the Narkina 5 storyline. And thankfully, they aren't too heavy episodes in terms of content, so we can fly through them fairly quickly. And starting the episode of the announcement with my favourite character of Cyril, still sat in his bedroom on Coruscant with his evil mother. And they get the breaking news announcement of what's gone down, and the stealing of a whole quarter of wages for our sector by the rebels from the poor, hard-working, loyal, democratic, imperial civil servants. And Cyril, a little bit shocked by that. And obviously, we then cut to Deidre as well. She's getting ready, very smartly dressed as always, and heading to the Imperial meeting where obviously they're discussing what's been going on. Not very happy bunch of Imperials because they're now under severe pressure because this is now galactic news. Very embarrassing for them. And obviously they're linking everything back to the involvement of Cassian Andor. And but they haven't quite got a handle on quite what's going on and how at this moment in time. And obviously Luthen Rail, very much the architect of what's going on, and he has a meeting with Mon Mothma because she's obviously concerned about how this has become galactic news as well, and the pressure that that may bear on her, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite a slow start to the episode, isn't it?
It is.
But again, that's the beauty of Andor. It unfolds like a book. It's just given time to breathe. All the content is there. That's what makes it so rewatchable. There's things that you'll miss the first time you watch it. It's part of its beauty.
And I'm going to come back to that because there's something I noticed that I never noticed before, but amused me when I saw it. Obviously, Luthen's assistant there, she's kind of listening in, and the whole fakeness of it all because they can't trust the limo driver, rather.
Yeah.
And it's interesting the way that this is basically the beginnings of the rebellion, and it's interesting to see how underhand it was and against the box, how undemocratic their behaviour was.
I think they're proven quite right not to trust the driver. I think that happens later on.
They then cut to Cyril, whose uncle has been kind enough to organise a job for him, working in a very important department that the Empire has set up, which is effectively weights and measures. And they're not. Everyone goes on about how the Empire was all about strong arming worlds and bullying them into submission, but they're keeping tight on legislation here and making sure when people order a pint, they get a pint. And
he's a civil servant working in a namby-pamby admin job.
That's terrible. There's a mouse droid there just to show you. He's got his own little cubicle. It's lovely. And he gets a job in making sure that fuel is up to standard. And fuel becomes a major issue in Star Wars in this era because it's mentioned all the time in every single film. And you just think, without Cyril making sure that it was up to standard, think of the problems that could have been had. Mr. Newbold asked the important question, who is Uncle Harlow? Will we find out? Will this be a story much like what happened to Andor's sister that will be, if we don't get a resolution to who Uncle Harlow is, I'm going to suggest that Uncle Harlow is married to Andor's sister.
Ooh. Hey, that'd be good. Either that, or he was the annoying passenger that was on the bus spaceship with Luthen Rail.
Yeah, we get a little bit of a tour around McLaren's F1 offices, and a little bit of tour around London. If you go to the Phantom Track social media, you'll find these reworld locations all around London, and the Barbican, I think, is there as well. Little chalk marks to guide the rebels on their way. And they have their whilst the Imperials are debating what's going on, and things are kicking off as well for those rebels left behind, and the Imperials are cracking down on them. They have their little meeting. They're discussing what's going on with the rebellion, who's got the money, what they're going to spend it on, and we get Andor himself having gone back to Ferrex to meet his how would you describe her? Would you describe her as his mother?
Adoptive mother, yeah.
His Stockholm syndrome captor, I would describe it as.
I forgot your stance on it. Yeah.
Oh, I just spit facts. And Mon Mothma's obviously got her party going on. and she meets up with an old school friend, and they have a little coded conversation where both of them are slightly too frightened to say that they're rebels, but they kind of let each other know. Her poor husband, completely unaware of what a scumbag Mon Mothma is, and then we get the lovely daughter as well.
I don't think you're not reading the room here, bro. You're not reading the
Are we not liking Mon Mothma's husband? Such a charming and nice guy. look, what's not to love? Look at that lovely guy.
What a sleazeball.
He's going to be so crushed and in tears when he finds out that his wife's been secretly building a rebellion against democracy. He'll probably get arrested, you know.
You think?
Yeah, he'll get arrested and spoken to because they'll just assume that he must have known. Sad days. Anyway, Andor, meanwhile, sneaking about Ferrex, meets up with Bix, and he also experiences a flashback to Imperial rule.
Yeah, that was nice, wasn't it? To see
involving his father as well, and it was a nice nice little callback. A couple of comments here from Mr. Newbold. We need to pick up on Perrin is a dick. Shocking. And he also thinks that it's his mum. No, it's his captor. And she's watering the plant. She's just ignoring him while he's like giving out his heart to her because she doesn't really care for him. She just stole him away from his family, basically. Anyway, Imperials have decided to crack down. Things are getting out of hand. Dirty rebels have been stealing their cash. And Deidre, she's getting a lot of credit. She's been doing a lot of good work, a lot of good investigations. She's cracking down on who's behind it all. And we'd go a little trip to Blackpool Pleasure Beach. And,
well, not far. Was it Cleveley?
Cleveley, yeah, just down the coast. I went and visited. Lovely. Andor, living the high life on his stolen money. His girlfriend, we'll call her his girlfriend. We'll presume that he's not spent any of his money, and it's a genuine friend there. We're not entirely sure. Secretly digging out some credits out of stolen loot, and he's got his weapons and his ID and all that there. And he hides it above the shower. This may become relevant in season 2. Will he go back for it?
Oh, I hope so.
We also had the mother of a Fanta Tracks member in this episode as well.
We did. I've got her autograph.
The only droids I like are Imperial probe droids. Loyal, do their job, blow themselves up when need be. And Cassian, he's going for an ice cream because that's an ice cream shop. Do really nice ice creams. And it gets stopped and by we're calling them sand troopers.
Shore troopers, weren't they?
Shore troopers. Okay.
Yeah.
And he's a bit mouthy, so he has to get taken down a peg or two. So we get a security droid, commonly now known as K2SO. It's not K2SO at all, but it's just Brandon. It's like calling a vacuum cleaner a Hoover. And he gets held and taken to court because it's a democracy. There's a legal procedure here. It's not people just say they do bad things and lock people up for no reason. There's a whole trial which lasted 5 seconds. And the magistrate, beautiful flag there in the background. Look at that. That's democracy manifest. And if you read his charges, you can translate that Jedi sympathizer, scumbag, absolute scumbag. So he's going to go to jail. KX security droid. See, there we go. Fact checking, and also shore troopers. Mark keeping us right there. And so we see the legislation and democracy in place here. Here's Cyril working hard, making sure that all the fuel's compliant, and a lot of hard workers there. The Empire are doing great things. Would you say that's a good summary of what's going on, Paul?
I would say the thing that comes to mind straight away is Office Space. I don't know if you've ever seen that fantastic film starring Jennifer Aniston. But yeah, it just reminds me of Office Space. It kind of looks like the internal mechanisms of a spaceship. If you lowered the dome of a Ubrikian spaceship on top of that, you've basically got a whole little starship. You've made your own little mini rigs. What a horrible, horrible past / future world that sort of conjures. Shocking. I can't believe you're on board with this, Brian.
What I would point out, and this is, I think, this is a fault of Emperor Palpatine. Very rarely that I will fault him. If you look around this picture, there's quite a few desks where there's nobody there, and they're clearly working from home. Should have clamped down on that. I think that's really where the downfall of the Empire came from.
They're working from home. They could be on smoking breaks. They could have gone to Subway to get a sandwich.
Yeah, they're walking the dog. I think this is basically your first hint of what caused the downfall of the Empire. Was he wasn't hard enough on working from home workers, you know. So that was episode 7, the announcement. And then we went, a fantastic episode, to Narkina 5.
Yep.
And Andor, he's been jailed 6 years, I think he got, for his Jedi sympathizing. Meanwhile, Cyril's working hard, making sure fuel's compliant. Andor's getting taken to jail. But Cyril gets called in by Deidre for a interrogation, I would suggest that you would call it. But if you look, he's wearing a suit. Very important nowadays to wear a suit. And a tie on. So he's doing well, and they have a lot of sexual tension. I would describe it as in this episode between Deidre and Cyril. I hope they end up together.
I think it's on the cards. Yeah.
And he's basically been giving them information on Cassian Andor, and finally Deidre in her role for the Empire's kind of been listening to him, and she's connecting all the dots. But they still don't know where Andor is, and Andor is actually under arrest and on Narkina 5. But they've gotten us so far as to understand what components they were stealing. They're kind of tracing Luthien Rail without having a name or an image of him, but they have the image of Andor, so he's prime target now. But he's actually on Narkina 5. He's just been checked in, and plays a little game of Twister whilst he's there.
That was a great scene when they showed you how the floors worked.
It was very, very good. They could have had it in this scene as well, and it would have been great. A little bit of some kind of electric torch out would have been a nice parallel. Again, great acting by the pair of these two actors. Great scenes. I loved this. It was this is was just awesome, I thought. And this is what I spoke about earlier, just a little callback. The shoes on the wall, like they had in FedEx.
Yeah.
And I just loved that.
I suppose.
Because you had the gloves on the wall in FedEx, and you've got the shoes on the wall in Narkina 5. I kind of just like that little touch. I'd never picked up on that. And those are the boots, obviously, that the officers wear. Yeah, your rubber-soled shoes.
Yeah.
To stop you getting electrocuted. And Andor is brought into the room, well disciplined, prisons, and we meet our Planet of the Apes legend here as well. Who's the boss of the facility, basically, amongst the workers, the detainees. I guess you would describe it as, Paul.
Yeah, if it had been sort of like the equivalent in our time and our world, he's basically the prisoner that the prisoners have to look up to. Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't really know what they're making at this point, but it will be revealed at a later point. And we cut back to Mon Mothma and loving family. And wonderful daughter there as well.
Whiny.
And you actually see in Narkina 5 that they're able to communicate in the scale of the facility. They're kind of hand signaling to each other what's going on. It's kind of revealed that some prisoners have been killed. Unfortunate things happen, you know. And
they're basically starting to find out that they're never going to get out. They're never going to be free.
And you had a nice transition between Andor being under arrest and Mon Mothma living the high life here, which I thought was just a nice way to cut back and forth between the two scenes. And we meet a certain someone, future rebel, future Rogue One participant.
Which was a nice little nice touch.
And he's going to be back in season 2.
Yes, Melshi has appeared in the season 2 trailer. Yeah.
And Andor begins settling in. And we see some time jumps as well. He's having a little drink, 30 shifts in.
30 shifts later.
Yeah, has a shower. Gets back to work. And he's in jail and his time's passing on. We cut back to Ferrex, which I thought was quite a really well done scene. And Andor's captor stroke mum, fallen very ill, not doing very well. B2Emo's concerned, Bix is concerned, all Andor's mates are concerned. Someone that's not too concerned, a couple of rebels who work with Andor are actually spying on Andor's family because there's a concern as to, is he with them? Is he against them? Is he going to reveal something he shouldn't? And this shows you the depths of the rebellion. They don't trust their own people. Bix, she's kind of trying to get a message to Andor as well because obviously his mum's ill and she wants him to know. And but they're not particularly helpful. Everyone's still got their suspicions over Andor, and it's an interesting one. It shows you the I guess the level of deceit and the level of concern and what they're trying to build as a rebellion as to who they can trust.
This character here as well that works at the antique shop with Luthen Rail, she's more pivotal than I think we've been.
Yeah, she's quite in the leadership, I would guess.
Yes, yeah. And she's been given like a sort of menial sort of double identity to sort of hide that. But she's also appeared in the season 2 trailer.
Yeah. And on Narkina 5, one inmate has not followed the rules.
No.
And is sadly eliminated from the game.
That's a good game.
And that was a nice little cap to the Narkina 5 story for this week. Just shows you what happens if you step out of line. And we cut back to present day Ferrex, which kind of paralleled nicely with Andor's father's story. And the Imperials, no longer clone troopers, but stormtroopers, looking for a badly behaved lady who turns out to be Bix, who goes on a run and eventually gets captured. And we also get a little side story begins with a little venture to Saw Gerrera's camp. And Luthen Rail and Saw have a great little story about what it means to be a rebel and what they should be doing. And it shows you there's not necessarily 100% agreement in the rebellion. There's all these different little factions and groups, and whilst they're in contact with each other and maybe not all on the same page.
And also that Saw Gerrera isn't quite as cybernetic as he is when we get to Rogue One.
Yeah.
So whether we get to see what happens, I don't know. But certainly from the clips we've seen for season 2, he does look a little bit more closer to the Rogue One version.
Yeah. And of course, Bix arrested for her part in the crimes against the Empire. And we learn that Deidre's behind it all. She's been interrogating Bix's friends who have basically dobbed her in. And she's kind of horrified to see that he's been tortured. Huh.
Yeah.
Not as horrified as when she gets tortured next. Serves her right. Don't betray democracy. That's what happens. And we get one line final shot in Narkina 5. What do you think they're building, Paul?
Ooh, I think they're building like Rubik's Cubes, that kind of thing.
I think everybody thought TIE fighters.
Yeah, I don't know what I thought it was. I thought it might have been a part for a droid or something, but yeah.
But what we'll find out, and we'll discuss it next week, because I think it's revealed next week, is they're building a device that will bring democracy back to the galaxy, peace and justice. And without revealing too much, that brings the end to the Death Star Cometh. Did you like that, Paul? That was slick, wasn't it?
Oh, it's the audio book that I never knew I needed.
Anyway, the Death Star Cometh, part of Good Morning Tatooine, live streams every Sunday at 9 p.m. and we'll also be releasing them as individual videos as well. Paul, that is the end of this week's Good Morning Tatooine. It's been a big episode, unexpected, but we got into the weeds there and a few of that news items.
Have you seen the time?
I know. Terrible.
Very good.
Yeah, and Mark also pointing out, far too late for us, that Clea, that was the lady's name that Luthien Rail's cohort.
Oh, right. From the antique
more
shop,
important than she appears. She will be more important than she appears, I think, in season 2.
Yeah. I've even asked her a question at an event. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. Anyway, big news week. Lots of news items to discuss there.
Yes.
Big couple of episodes in Andor. Next week's going to get interesting because we kind of get the end to another arc. Lot of fun to be had. And we're getting ever closer to Celebration, so expect some more announcements, I think, of what's happening panel-wise, including potentially, maybe next week we'll announce what Panther Tracks are doing at the show. Ooh. That would be exciting, wouldn't it? Anyway, on that bombshell, before we go, we should promo some things, shouldn't we? We should.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see what can we promo. Let's start panthertracks.com, your one-stop shop for everything Star Wars and Lucasfilm, covering film, TV, collecting, fashion, gaming, literature, music and art. Lots of interviews, event coverage, podcasts and reviews on there.
And we've got social media, of course. You can follow us on all of these different platforms. That's TikTok, X, Threads, Facebook and Instagram. We're pretty much everywhere that you could imagine us to be.
Yeah. Panther Tracks Radio as well. Search for that on your podcatcher of choice. Making Tracks is on Tuesday at 7 p.m, including a question from me that they'll have to answer. And according to Mark Newbold, Mark Mulcaster goes off in a rant on a few of the questions. So I look forward to that. And we also have Cannon Fodder with artist Dan Tyrrell this Friday at 7 p.m. as well. And of course, Panther Tracks TV, Good Morning Tatooine every Sunday, Jabba's Court on a Wednesday at 7 p.m, and something about live stream gaming happening at some point, but we'll worry about that another day, because I'm getting fed up making excuses.
That's Panther Tracks is the equivalent of the Lando Calrissian series.
Mr. Newbold also reminding us that there'll be a Star Wars Celebration Japan collecting track reveal exclusive this week on panthertracks.com, so keep your eyes peeled out for that.
Thank you.
And that, Paul, brings us to the end of the show.
Right.
An epic.
What are you doing to me?
I know. So should we just say it's a good night from me?
And it's a very good night from him. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Keep up to date with the latest Star Wars news each and every day on panthatracks.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Pinterest at Panthatracks. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow Panthatracks TV to be alerted to new content and to be a part of our live shows.